hopefully Jose can get in here. I think she's coming along. Okay, well, I will get started. Thank you for joining me today at the AIM Introduction to AIM webinar. I'm so glad you could join. I'm going to be talking a lot about AIM. Oops, here we go. About AIM and how it works and what are the various aspects to this methodology that has been used now for well over 20 years. AIM Language Learning is now celebrating its 20th anniversary, but we've been around since the early 90s, or I have been around and developing AIM since the early 90s. Hi, Jose. Nice that you could be here today.
Yes, and I am here on behalf of myself and my coworker Laura. Just with the one-day switch, she couldn't make it this evening, but
okay. Well, you'll have a recording of the session too. So
okay, great. Thanks.
Great. Thank you for joining. That's just lovely.
Mm-hmm.
So are you Jose and Laura as your colleague?
Yes, and yeah, there's a teacher at our school currently that did your training. And Laura and I have kind of observed and watched, so we're just very interested to learn more on your side versus what we've kind of learned secondhand through the other French teacher at our school.
Okay, well, that sounds just great. Well, hopefully you'll get lots of information today that's useful.
Sure.
So I am Wendy Maxwell, and I have taught for many years since the 1980s and developed AIM through, well, after teaching in French immersion, I developed AIM teaching as a core French teacher, FSL in Ontario, and then subsequently have taught in immersion bilingual programs and core French programs after that. And I currently more so am an author and teacher trainer with AIM. So today I'm going to talk about how AIM, which stands for the Accelerative Integrated Methodology, rapidly develops proficiency, which if used well, it definitely does. So, I mean, you can just write in the chat or you can just tell me, Heidi, I'm not sure if, I guess you're here, but I haven't heard from you quite yet. But if you're not comfortable saying where you're from and what you do, that's fine. You can just write it in the chat. Otherwise, you can just turn on your microphone and let me know.
Can you hear me?
Oh, for some reason the sound is so low. I don't know if it's
Can you hear me?
I can, but just barely. It's just bizarre. I'm not sure why, but you can hear me okay. Is that right?
Yes. No, yeah, I can hear. I can speak really loud.
Okay, yeah, that's
I just finished my teacher education, and as part of it, I actually saw a kindergarten French immersion teacher using AIM, and I've heard about it, and so I wanted to learn a little bit more to see if maybe it's something I want to look into.
Perfect. Okay, and sorry, where are you located, Heidi?
I'm in British Columbia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, lovely. Just like me, we're still in daylight, and I think Jose, you're on the other side of the coast.
Yeah, I'm in Halifax, Nova Scotia, so it's 7:15 for me.
Yes.
Yeah, I teach at an English school, but we integrate French junior primary, a little bit a day, but then by grade 3, they're pretty close to reading, writing. So we try to do a bit more than French core, closer to immersion within our French classes. So yeah, trying to just find ways to get our students that have really only 40 minutes a day of French, but when they're there, quite immersive. So just, looking ways to broaden and
well, that's
that
what
language
AIM
in thoroughly.
That is what AIM does best. So, so the AIM developed out of a desire on my part to try to get my students who were just having 30 minutes a day of French in Toronto, nice school, private school, perfect environment, really. To the parents were supportive. The kids were, average to above average. Typically, we had a few kids with learning challenges, but not too many. So it was actually a really ideal scenario for the learning of anything, including French. And when I entered this school, I taught from junior kindergarten right through to grade 5. And I realized that my first week of school, well, I expected that after 7 years of French, my grade 5s would be very good in the language. But unfortunately, after 7 years, those kids could not understand what I was saying. They couldn't speak in French at all. They couldn't write a sentence, much less a story. And I thought, oh, this is just absurd. After all these years, nothing's happened. Well, throughout the years, I've really learned that well, my professor at the University of Ontario said, don't quote me on this, but there is no proficiency in core French. When I wanted to do a comparative study of the AIM students once I developed AIM with other students. So it's not uncommon for core French students not to do very well, but it is possible. Now, after having developed AIM, I've realized that it absolutely is possible. And actually, some AIM students are stronger in 40 minutes a day than even immersion students. So I'm going to share today how AIM is accelerative, how it's integrated, as my experience initially as an immersion teacher led me to realize how wonderful it is and effective it is to teach French, for example, through another subject area, not just teaching French for the sake of teaching French, because students are then learning other skills that can be applied to other areas of the curriculum. It raises the value of French as a second language. And so my approach is more of a CLIL approach, communicative integrated language teaching. So I'm integrating it with another subject area, which is the literacy and arts-based approach. And it is a methodology. AIM is a system. Different aspects of AIM have been used, as AIM developed, I did that too. I would use, as I started to develop one aspect, and then I added another and another. So various aspects of AIM can be used individually, but together they become a very powerful system. It is a methodology. So we'll have a look at this video of AIM students in different areas of the world and in different languages.
Now,
Everyone
will
do
do
the song.
Are you able to hear that well enough? Oh, good. Okay, because my sound is not coming through very well.
No, ta grand-mère. Parce que c'est la grand-mère de Chaperon Rouge et la mère parle à Chaperon Rouge. Alors c'est ta grand-mère. To the monde est fantastique.
La classe toma. Yo tomo.
Una persona importante o importante. Entonces yo no hablo con tú. Okay.
Contigo.
Oh, sí.
我要找一个歌手，小鸡住在农场里，以前小鸡出上学，一个小国家在小鸡的桌上。怎么了？哎呀，天塌了，天塌了！怎么了？你去哪里？天塌了，天塌吗？
So you can see that AIM is now used to teach various different languages. French still remains the widest use of AIM for the teaching of French. I do love it that the new curriculum guidelines in Canada and elsewhere talk about the importance of the development of proficiency. That's what AIM has always focused on, along with the can-do statements from the CEFR. And so the alignment there is really wonderful, because that is truly what why I developed AIM, is to ensure that students were speaking, reading, writing in the language, not learning to conjugate verbs and just learn lists of nouns, as I used to teach through my thematic approach. So AIM is an accelerative approach with a comprehensible input-based component. A lot of what we do is to ensure that students are understanding. You're going to see what I show you today, how this occurs. As I mentioned, it's a CLIL, has a CLIL focus, content and language integrated learning focus, with the primary goal to develop authentic proficiency. So what AIM does best, and what is I find most difficult to do, is to rapidly help students develop a basic level or a foundational level of proficiency in a very, very short time. Because sometimes I find that even parents who have spoken to me, you know, saying, oh, my daughters learn more in her grade 1 or 2 classroom than I learned in 5 years of high school. And I think this is really a travesty when we think about how long sometimes it takes, or sometimes never, that students will take, at whatever age they are, language courses and never develop any proficiency. So my goal is to rapidly get students up and running in the language as quickly as possible. AIM was not written based on any specific curriculum, but I have linked it to many curricula around the world, including curriculum guidelines across provinces in Canada, as well as ACTFL in the United States. It is a multidisciplinary approach. As I mentioned, I work through a literacy and arts-based approach. A lot of brain-based studies support AIM, and I'm happy to share those studies with you. It's a lot. We have a few links on our website, and other research has been done on AIM as well. So it's used in various places in the world, mostly in Canada, also in the Netherlands to a great degree, and Australia and the United States, as well as a few other countries here and there to a lesser degree. There are a few other countries in Europe that also where AIM is used as well. So AIM started in, as I mentioned, that independent school in Toronto, and now it's used much more widely in public schools, but of course, many schools, independent schools, whether they're in the Canadian Association of Independent Schools or Montessori schools or other schools as well, use AIM, Christian schools as well. We have a large percentage of schools in Australia and the Netherlands that use it. AIM research was voted the best research paper in the Journal of European Second Language Acquisition this past year, and Dutch students were rated the best in the country, Dutch AIM students. And we have teachers who've won various competitions in the United States and who are AIM teachers. So the key components of the methodology, there are many other components actually, but these are the ones that sort of stand out. One is the use of gestures, which is a unique technique. Most language teachers will use gestures, of course, to help support what they want to say. But this takes the use of gesture to a whole other level, because every word that we teach in what I call the pared down language, and I'll mention that in a moment, every word that we teach is associated with a gesture. So the students are visualizing the language, they are hearing the language, and sometimes kinesthetically embedding the language simultaneously. And what happens, and why AIM works so well to rapidly accelerate language acquisition, is because the students are storing this information, visual, kinesthetic, and auditory, in different parts of the brain. And so it makes for easier recall of the words. And rapidly, when we talk about comprehensible input, helps students understand. Any language has just a series of arbitrary sounds. If you don't understand Mandarin and I say ni hao, you don't know what that is. But if I say ni hao, then, oh, right away, okay, that's what that arbitrary sound ni hao means. So through the gesture approach, we not only help students understand, but we also help students produce the language. So as this teacher is gesturing and helping students understand, the teacher is requiring that the students also say the words. As you saw in the video there, the teacher is gesturing, the students are speaking. So even before they can speak at all independently, they get hours and hours of practice being led through the language. They develop accent, they develop confidence, they develop the ability to actually use the language and understand it, guided by the teacher. Inherent in the gesture approach is also a lot of grammar. So we have the feminine forms. Il est content, elle est contente, that added sound that attaches to the end of an adjective allows students to visualize, kinesthetically embed, and hear and say that additional sound. We also have other gestures. So we have the gender gestures. We have the il marche and il va marcher. The infinitive form is added to the end with a little R, whether it's IR, OIR, IR, IRE, and OIRE. They all have an R, the infinitive form. So the kids are really seeing and feeling every aspect of the language. So what language do we teach? Well, dictionaries are this thick. How do we choose? In the past, I always chose thematic vocabulary. That never taught my students anything really, because there was a great focus on nouns. AIM is very verb-centered. It's extremely verb-rich. I teach lots of nouns and a lot of linking vocabulary, which is also very important, and many, many questions. But I focus a lot on the acquisition of verbs. We are a moving and action-oriented society, and students need to know verbs and how to use them. And in French, what I do is I regularize the stem of the verb so that it gives an easy entry into the language. The students don't have to worry about root changes or verb endings. We just use that one form, which orally applies in most verbs to je, tu, il, elle, on, tout le monde, and la classe. So we can use tu veux, il veut, elle veut, on veut, tout le monde veut, la classe veut. Rather than using nous and vous, we put that aside just as when we begin. So you can keep that regularization and get the kids an easy entry, speaking correctly, and later on we teach nous and vous as subjects. Contextualization of vocabulary is essential, and knowing how to contextualize it so it's engaging and give students the opportunity for that important, pleasant repetition can happen when we're looking at theater and drama and music and dance. And so all of these things can happen if we are contextualizing vocabulary through this context, which becomes our literacy and arts-based approach. And we take a story that becomes very well known to the students because each kit lasts 50 hours of instruction. So if you have French every day, whether it's a bilingual program, extended French, immersion, or core French, if you have French every day for at least 30 minutes, you can get through one kit from September to January. That's 50 hours. And then the remainder of the year is the second kit, February to June. So we spend a long time on this one kit and delve deeply into the story. And because they come to know the story so well, the students can then work with the language of the story and learn to manipulate it independently without asking them to do something like, if I was taking a Mandarin course and the teacher asked me what I like to do on the weekend, and I might understand the question, but I don't have the vocabulary to respond, and it's stressful, and the kids, then revert to English, which is not great. But if we start with a story that they come to know intimately well, and say we're working on Les Trois Petits Cochons, and I ask, qu'est-ce que le premier petit cochon aime faire dans sa maison? Well, they can answer right away. Le premier petit cochon aime jouer de la guitare dans sa maison de paille, for example. And then we can gradually help students talk about themselves. But when we start with something simple and well-known, it gives them that confidence. And finally, of course, our main goal is the transfer to spontaneous communication, oral and written. We start with oral, and then we move to written. And we want this to happen from the very first class. So with the gesture approach, just to recap, students see, hear, say, and sometimes kinesthetically embed vocabulary. And it really indeed does make comprehension and recall very, very easy. Astoundingly easy, actually. I'm going to show a video with a teacher using French with her students, and she is not using AIM.
Aujourd'hui, je suis très excitée parce que la semaine prochaine, je vais visiter mon ami qui habite à Winnipeg. C'est vrai, je suis née à Winnipeg et toute ma famille habite à Winnipeg. J'ai 2 sœurs et j'ai ma maman et mon papa qui habitent là. Alors ma maman est tellement contente.
So she's sharing, it's lovely. She's sharing things about her family, about her weekend, talking only in French. We've got target language only. The kids are listening. We don't know if they understand, but they're listening. Now, this is not the way we would do this in an AIM class. This is how we would do that in an AIM class.
Pardon? Winnipeg. Excellent. Alors, je vais continuer maintenant. Est-ce que tout le monde sait ou ne sait pas que je suis née à Winnipeg? Je sais. C'est vrai. Je suis née là-bas et j'ai aussi des amis que je peux visiter là-bas aussi.
So we can see the teacher is leading the students through natural, spontaneous communication. It's not scripted, it's not pre-rehearsed. The students don't know what she's going to say, but they are doing the speaking on her behalf. And so it really gives students extensive practice with language use over many, many, many classes as this occurs, and we build up their knowledge of the pared down language and of the gestures. And of the grammar that the teacher is using. The teacher asked a question, the students gave an answer, the grammar's embedded in her gestures as she's speaking. And so it really works extremely well to help the weak students, the shy students, and the strong students have equal opportunity for participation in the classroom because everyone is speaking together. We don't single out students and have 24 students listen while one student speaks. Everyone is practicing together. Again, just a little recap of the pared down language, which simplifies language to help students rapidly understand and allows for that important, pleasant repetition that ensures acquisition. We have the high frequency words. That's how the pared down language was selected based on frequency. The regularization of the stem. We use cognates to rapidly help students understand whenever possible, and it is a very verb-centered approach. So what AIM does is to really, excuse me, flip the typical linguistic power structure in a classroom. That being, the teacher knows all the language, even if the teacher isn't very strong in French. The teacher knows more French, and the kids know little to none. And so what happens is the teacher is now forced to adjust the words that the teacher uses to reflect the student's knowledge. So what is happening is, as the teacher teaches the first class and teaches this first amount of vocabulary, the students then learn those words and those gestures associated with those words. And this is now the student and teacher's shared vocabulary. Yes, the teacher still knows all these words, but the teacher can't use those words as the teacher normally would in any other classroom where the teacher already speaks French, as I did as a French teacher. I would use all kinds of words with my kids and they didn't know what I was saying. Now we have a method where we are sharing our language acquisition together in a way. The next class, the teacher learns those gestures and knows those words probably already, teaches those words and gestures to the kids, repeats the words and gestures that were learned in the first class, and we move up. It's a very hierarchical approach that really ensures that students are, well, first of all, we're respecting where they are in their language acquisition process, always giving them words that we've formally introduced, and also making sure that we're giving them that pleasant repetition, the visual experience with the language as well. So as I mentioned earlier, we contextualize the pared down language through our literacy and arts-based approach. And David Booth, who was a mentor of mine when I did my undergraduate work for my Bachelor of Education, and also when I did my master's degree, I took courses from him, and I really appreciated his approach, which was well, he was a literacy and drama expert for English in English first language classes, but I think his ideas apply even more so in a second language environment. He talked about the fact that the best literacy approaches don't try to do as many readers or stories as possible, but rather to stick to one and delve deeply into it. He called it going in, out, and around a story, and helping students to really come to understand the characters, the setting, the scene, the plot, in a deep way, engaging with it deeply. And for a language, in a second language perspective, that is also extremely important and helpful to students who don't have a lot of language already. They come to know it very well. And this is a quote from David Booth saying, children new to a language find in a story context for understanding, and it's not word lists that command their attention, but the lives of characters that fill the tales they read or listen to. And how painful it must be for those children alien to a language to sit day after day without feeling connected to what is happening. And yet through storying, how quickly they enter the activity, making sense of what is happening, building their own versions, listening, telling, retelling, talking about, reflecting upon, and responding. And this is what really does happen in an AIM classroom. So let's have a quick look at one of the French stories that we have, just a very brief excerpt.
Le guépard arrive à la maison du lion. Il parle avec lui.
Monsieur Lion, qu'est-ce qu'on fait? Il ne pleut pas depuis longtemps. Tout le monde a très soif. C'est un gros problème. Est-ce que tu peux nous aider?
D'accord, Guépard. Tu dois aller à l'arbre Ungali, un arbre magique qui est loin d'ici dans la forêt. Tu dois dire le nom de l'arbre et après ça, l'arbre peut aider les animaux. Dis à l'arbre que tout le monde a soif parce qu'il n'y a pas d'eau. N'oublie pas, c'est l'arbre Ungali.
Oh, merci, Monsieur Lion. Merci. Je cours à l'arbre maintenant. Au revoir.
So that's just a very, very short excerpt of a play story that we work on, as I mentioned, over the course of the entire kit. And yeah, typically it takes about 10 to 15 minutes to perform these little theater pieces. We have many different songs and raps because I find that, and I'm sure most language teachers also find that using rhythm and rhyme is a fantastic way to engage students, to incorporate also the aspect of dance to that, so the kids are moving kinesthetically to the language with their full body, not just with a gesture, is also a wonderful way to engage students, to keep the brain alert because they're up and moving, and to also ensure that students are learning the language in a different way, seeing those same words in a different context. Oops, sorry, I wanted to show you the rap first, for high school.
La classe commence et tout le monde est prêt. On doit parler seulement en français. Mais si quelqu'un parle en anglais, cette personne n'a pas de carte et ça c'est vrai. Ça c'est dommage, mais on espère aussi que tout le monde décide d'aider ses amis. En français, on parle tellement bien. Notre rap est terminé, oui c'est la fin.
So we do insist on a target language only immersive environment in AIM. And I have various strategies and systems, and techniques that I use to help teachers maintain that target language only. Here's another song every story that we have that's a theater piece is also has an associated song and dance. Yeah, so those are there more for the primary elementary students. For high school, we ask them to create their own, or we do some other things with the kids as well, with respect to moving to music. The language manipulation activities that I mentioned earlier are an extremely important aspect to the development of proficiency. If we just hand the kids a script and, use our gestures when working with the whole class, it is not going to get the students proficient at all. It helps, but the language manipulation activities are are really key to the development of proficiency, because during this 1/3 to 1/2 of every single class where the kids are working together, interacting, speaking in the language, using the language that they've become so familiar with during whole class activities as the teacher was modeling them, the students must have these opportunities to apply what they know. And so all of these activities are scaffolded in a very specific manner to get students increasingly more challenged by the activities until they end up writing their own stories. And finally, of course, as I mentioned, we want the transfer to spontaneous speech and creative writing in the target language only. That is our goal. We have had many teachers and professors, various consultants who have used AIM across Canada and in the world. And this is Gary Karkin. He used AIM actually for adults in the United States. And here are a few others.
If I had to choose, one thing that distinguishes AIM classrooms from more typical core French classrooms, it's the level of emotional investment that kids have in the process and the fun that they're having. And again, that's fuel that drives the learning process.
So they're very keen and they can apply. I guess the most remarkable point is that they can apply everything or a lot of what they've learned in a context, in everyday life context.
And what we didn't anticipate would happen was that students in grade 4 with a sibling that it was in grade 7 were going home at night and actually speaking French in sentences at the dinner table. And the feedback was very impressive from the parents that all of a sudden their kids were having conversations that they couldn't follow in French at the dinner table.
It's just so great. And I do see this often, that kids make the language part of who they are. They take it outside the classroom. They use it. Well, when I'm teaching, they can't use anything else with me. I mean, whether I'm on recess duty outside or lunch duty or doing a karate club or a cooking club, it's always in French. They don't know that I speak English, actually, so there's no choice. But they also on their own will take it outside and use it. And that's so lovely to see. This is a few grade 8. It's a grade 8 class who had used at the end of their second step kit 1 year of French. We just asked the kids to just talk about anything and we film them. We kind of put them on the spot, but they just started talking.
Oui, tu es toute seule maintenant. Et tout le monde avec Melissa. Oui, j'ai oublié son nom. J'aime qui est peu de mes chanteurs. Est-ce que tu peux chanter ça maintenant? Ça va bien, je chante. Très bien. Oh, oui? Est-ce que tu peux chanter maintenant? Non. Parce que tu es très oh oui.
Il y a 5 personnes dans ma famille, mais je pense que mon frère est un animal.
So she's complaining about her brother, but at least it's in French. And in the first segment, the young guy was trying to get the girl opposite him to sing on camera. She didn't want to do that, but it was nice that when he tried to think of the word, you can see there, he knows he can't say the word in English. He has to use circumlocution to get around and say what he wants to say without using English. But it was so nice to see the girl beside him. He wanted to say embarrassé. That's why she didn't want to sing, parce que tu es embarrassé. But he didn't have the word embarrassé. It's not part of the pared down language at that time, at that step 2 kit, and that they'd been working on. So the girl gave him peur, which they did know. So that was lovely to see. Cooperative learning is a really important aspect of this methodology. So yeah, students write a lot in AIM, and they develop their oral skills in tandem with written.
Oui, il n'y a pas de le mettre ensemble, le déchirer.
Est-ce que ça, c'est la même histoire, mais dans les mots différents?
Oh oui.
Dans les mots différents?
Qu'est-ce qu'on peut
Mais
faire? On peut
est-ce
faire
que tu fais en partenaire ou
Saute.
seul?
Beaucoup.
Est-ce que tu fais
Très pauvre.
Est-ce que tu fais ça?
Est-ce que c'est 100? Non, ça c'est juste une
maison.
et
Tu fais ça?
Louis.
Okay, so this is just a little excerpt just to show you that we do dedicate a good portion of every class where the kids are working together, discussing, reading as they write. And that is a very key component of the methodology. We do a lot of creative work with students, getting them to write, work with rhythm and rhyme. And this is a rap that some grade 8 students wrote at the end, in the middle of their second year with me.
Aujourd'hui, la classe commence et tout le monde pense et danse. Quand j'entre dans la classe française, je ne parle pas en anglais. On parle en français, c'est fantastique. La Bengali a bien appris. Je parle en français, c'est très très bien. Je fais les actions avec mes mains. En agresseur, ça c'est vrai. Mot. Word.
It's really nice to see, grade 8 boys having fun in French. And AIM is all about helping students, as I mentioned before, making them the language part of who they are and engaging with it in a creative way. So the only way we can do that is by getting them rapidly developing a certain level, at least a foundational level of proficiency within the first couple of kits. And that's what AIM does well. In about 100 hours of instruction, kids are able to speak, so by the end of the first year, able to speak in a basic way with each other. And then we just keep moving them up from there as they move into the next year and the next step kit and so on and so on. It's very, very important in my mind to do that. There are a lot of different creative writing that we have for students. I'm going to skip over that for a moment. So the first creative writing that we offer students is simply a retelling of the story that they've come to know well. So story retelling, the activity that we call story retelling, is a way to help students develop circumlocution, to develop an ability to write creatively in the language, and to simply produce something of which they are very proud. Piece of material, whether online, if you have iPads or Chromebooks, or on paper, a piece of work that they are very, very proud of. And so this is one of my grade 1 students, 30 minutes a day of French, core French. This was her first year of French, actually. And she retold the story of Le Chat et la Lune, which is a step 1 kit. Now, of course, a grade 1 student who can't write in English wouldn't be writing anything like this. For this purposes of story retelling, the students must retell the story in their own words without repeating any sentence directly from the original story. So they have to sort of recreate it, not change it at all, but rewrite it in their own words. They can add detail, embellish it. They can, basically, those are the 2 parameters. They have to retell it in their own words without repeating a sentence, and they should try as much as possible to add detail, which is where the literacy component comes in, and developing a story that's your own with including details that weren't in the original story. So this was written by that grade 1 student. And whether we're working with grade 1 or grade 11 in Spanish, grade 1 French, grade 11 Spanish, the process is exactly the same. The results will be different. Grade 1 students won't write the quantity that a grade 11 would, will not write with the precision, as correct punctuation or spelling, but I'm not going to worry about that. If a grade 1 can write 3 or 4 pages, that's just fantastic. But of course, we have higher expectations of someone in grade 11. And we can raise the bar for those ones. Back down to grade 7, this is the first year of French, this student. They worked on La Bengali in their first year. And of course, with grade 7, we're going to see, again, a better ability to sequence and use punctuation and grammar, correct grammar and spelling and so on, than we would see from a grade 1. It's going to be much longer. Now, the next creative story that we work on in AIM is the story extension. And story extension is in my opinion, the most fun story that we write, because although it is still scaffolded and based on the original story, it takes the story at its end point and moves, and the students take it forward. So they can draw on the same settings and context and plot if they like, or characters, but they don't have to. They can take the story wherever they want. So this is the story extension by a couple of my grade 1 students. One was in the second year of French with me, and one had just started French this year, and it's 30 minutes a day. So I'll read this to you because it's not too easy to read, but I think we all know the story of Les Trois Petits Cochons. The wolf falls in the soup. Okay, this is what they wrote. Après que le loup sort de Les Trois Petits Cochons, il va à la maison et dort, et se réveille et marche à l'arblase, et court et marche. Monsieur Loup est très fou et content. Et le loup frappe à la porte de la fille amie. Il va à son ami, il dit à son ami, est-ce que tu veux danser avec moi? Oui, je veux, je aime toi. L'ami dit, est-ce que tu veux aller à ma maison? Le loup dit, oui, oui, je veux. Le cochon est ici, dit le loup. I think they're now afraid of le cochon. J'ai peur, dit la fille amie. Cours à sa maison. Oui, je veux aller à ma maison. Est-ce que tu veux aller à ma maison? Oui, je veux aller à ta maison, dit le loup. Je veux faire une fête, dit la fille amie. The grade 1s just love their fête. Le loup dit, oui, 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 oui. Je veux, et est-ce que tu veux manger avec moi, dit le loup. Oui, oui, oui. And so on. So they go on a little bit further. I love the ça c'est délicieux down here, spelling. It's interesting. Anyway, so you see a lot of inventive spelling from grade 1s, which in many cases they're going to be doing in English anyway. So moving back up to grade 8 now, this student had AIM last year with the Salut Mon Ami kit for high school, and now in grade 8 is on to Veux-tu aller au carnaval? And in that kit, we often encourage teachers to have students read outside of the kit. And so they do story retellings or book reports, you could say, of stories that they've read, whether it be AIM readers or other stories that they read. We have another student from Missouri who didn't do a Qu'est-ce qui se passe après, but did a Qu'est-ce qui se passe avant. So what led up to the kit that they're working on? And she wrote about 1,000-word story here, describing what led up to the story for the kit they're working on. Okay, I don't think I have enough time today to show you this, but we have oral story retellings. Every student has to do an oral story retelling on their phone or their parent's phone, and it usually takes 10 to 12 or so minutes, or sometimes more, where they retell the story in their own words orally without repeating any sentence from the original story. And so both the story retellings written and extensions written, and as well as the story retellings orally, are a fantastic product at the end of every kit that can be put in a student's portfolio to track the progress of the student in their language skills. We don't quite have time for that. So how to learn to implement the methodology? Well, you could attend. Well, first of all, we do have resources for teachers, and they're very comprehensive. They include the hard copy resources come in a box where you get the program guide, which is an overview of the methodology. You get the teacher's guide or whole class activities book with every single activity laid out very clearly with a script, and the words that you teach in this lesson and how to review and repeat and recycle those words in following activities. There's an 85 lesson plan that will take teachers through the 50 hours of instruction from, say, September to the end of January. And so it's extremely guided as a guide, and extremely in depth. There's a great amount of explanation in those teachers' guides to help teachers really understand the methodology. And the scripts are there not necessarily to have teachers just follow the script word for word, but to show teachers how to introduce every word on the list that they should teach in that lesson, and how they could teach it effectively and contextualize it effectively, but also how they will bring forward words. So to ensure that pleasant repetition occurs, how they bring forward the words from previous activities into future activities, because that is absolutely necessary for acquisition. Students need to hear and use those words that they've been introduced to in different contexts and with a certain amount of repetition in order for it to be acquired. There are lesson templates. These are the 85 lesson plans that I was talking about earlier. There's an entry routine, whole class activities, partner group activities, and then a leaving routine in every single class. It's a very structured approach to help students who are new to a language find security and predictability, which also helps in the language acquisition process, I've found. In the student books, you're going to get the Blackline Masters. Well, you can buy, excuse me, buy student books for each student, but you also receive in your kit the Blackline Masters with the same activities that the teacher can just photocopy for the students. They're all there. And those activities teachers modeled through the whole class activities. Big books are there in hard copy for the little ones and for older students, and for everyone. Everyone also gets the copy of the big book read aloud with highlighted text that's projectable onto a whiteboard. Posters and image cards come in hard copy as well as projectable on the portal. Assessment activities books are there as well for teachers if you want to have student self-assessment or portfolio assessment, and little quizzes if the teacher is so inclined. I'm not a strong proponent of testing, but if it's required or the teacher wishes to, there are short little tests, mid-kit tests, and end-of-kit little quizzes. We have the language assessment activities package, which are DELF-like tests. Those appear in the new edition kits. So we can always test for language levels of proficiency, A1, A2, B1, B2, and so on. We don't call them DELF tests because they're not officially categorized as such by the CEFR organization, but they are similar to DELF tests. And those are some examples there. The portal is a really great resource, and it allows all the students to share their learning at home with parents because the portal comes with logins for students. But it also is something that the teacher can use often in the classroom, of course, to project the songs, the raps, the dances, and all the videos, the gestures are there. The e-reader of the story read aloud with highlighted text, and the posters are also on the portal as well. As I mentioned earlier, we have correlations with ministry guidelines. If you're interested in seeing those, I can point you to those on our website. And finally, of course, alongside our kits, because AIM is a methodology, we do recommend that teachers come to training at least every 1 or 2 years, especially as teachers are beginning to use AIM, just to get that support, reinforcement, to join the AIM community of teachers and the sharing that happens. So we do have our level 1 course for teachers new to AIM coming up very soon. We have one in Winnipeg. I'm going there on February 7th and 8th. And that course is a level 1 workshop for core, FSL, French immersion, bilingual, extended French, any teacher just starting at any age with French. It's a general level 1 course. We have our live online Winter Institute in February, and we have specific courses there. We have a core FSL course for kindergarten to 12 or immersion in grades 3 to 8. We have a French immersion for primary teachers and students, kindergarten grade 1 and 2. And then we have Spanish course, and a Mandarin as well. Finally, following the Winter Institute, teachers often like further hands-on practice with the methodology. So we have our online gesture practice, which you can bundle with the Winter Institute. So I sort of hold the teacher's hand through the initial implementation of AIM from April to June. And I actually engage them in AIM classes, so they see what it's like to be a student. 10 different AIM classes, taking them through the entire kit in a sort of condensed way. So that's about it. And I wanted to leave time for some questions. I don't know if you have any. Feel free to turn on microphones, or you can write it in the chat if you have any questions at all.
I don't have questions, but it was just, yeah, really nice to hear, yeah, the behind how it was created, the why, because my school, we definitely have a lot of your kits already. So I've seen the students, they ask, est-ce que je peux avoir un carte, s'il vous plaît? And they get their card at the end of the day. So I've just seen it in action, and it's just, that's what sparked my interest to kind of get into possibly, hopefully, your online winter training in February, March. So yeah, I don't really have questions today. I definitely, a question I had, but you kind of answered, and I'm sure it would be more thorough, is just, yeah, what ages you would recommend for each of the different kits, but that kind of came out just, and you kind of naturally would know as you're teaching that the older kids are interested in the wraps, where the younger students are more into just, yeah, that was a key part that I liked hearing about today.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, that's great. Yes. In the workshops, I do describe more in depth, what is most appropriate. We do have kits. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different level 1 kits for all the different ages. So La Poule Ma Boule is best for kindergarten, grade 1, and maybe grade 2. Le Chat et la Lune is good for grade 2, 3, maybe 4. Les Trois Petits Cochons is best, has the broadest range of applicability, really, grade 4, 5, 6, 7, even maybe 8. Sometimes teachers use it that high. Then we have our junior high kit, entry-level kit, level 1, step 1, I should say. That's called Le Garçon qui joue des tours, which is kind of like the boy who cried wolf, boy who learns a lesson.
That's the one that I remember
hearing
and helping with a lot last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That and a little bit on the younger side, just, but yeah. And it was just 4 or 5 months of Henri.
Oh, yes, Henri, that's right. And Christine always scolding him for everything he's doing with annoying everybody. And then we have the 2 high school kits, Salut mon ami and Une table pour deux. But if you are working with the little ones, it would be La Poule Ma Boule for like kindergarten to 2. And if you're in an immersion context, not in an immersion context, I would recommend it right up to K to 2. But your school is already using AIM at those grades?
Yes, we're kind of, lower elementary is just beginner. By grade 1, 2, the French teachers try to just speak French, and then it is grade, I think it was our grade 5 or 6 students that were using Henri qui joue des tours. So we try to aim for the grade 4 to 6s to be more immersive, but
yes, because
I more teach the younger.
That Henri story is a step 1 kit. So if kids have been doing AIM, they should really not be in a step 1 kit, because that's an entry level, just starting with bonjour and tout le monde, very, very early. So if you would like, I'd really be happy to consult with you guys and just perhaps create a scope and sequence, or a stream of kits that would be most appropriate to keep pushing the students forward. We don't want them to be going step 1, 2, and then back to 1, or even, if they're by grade 4 or 5, I don't know how many kits you should get through 2 a year. So you should be right through to step 5, 6 by that time. If you get through the primary series, there are 4 there. And then you can go through the elementary series, and you can double up sometimes, do a couple of level 2, step 2s, or maybe a couple of step 3s, if you want to, because you do have a lot of time. But certainly by grade 5, they should probably be up in the step 5 or 6 kits, I would think, if you've had French since.
Yeah, and I'm newer to the school and do know
Mhm.
certain teachers have used AIM. I wouldn't say it's been consistent throughout.
Okay.
So in with you, yes, saying with Henri being more of a level, I do remember that specific group seemingly altogether being a little bit weaker. So I think it may have been that teacher's choice was let's start kind of
Start all over again.
start back there again,
the
or maybe
beginning.
we were
Oh.
students. I'm not sure the reasoning, but it's more,
Sure.
yeah, the school, I've just seen so much of this AIM and I've seen kids, but yeah, not, I wouldn't say our school's cohesive across the board using it,
I
but
see.
certain teachers have had certain training. So I'm just, yeah,
Okay.
jumping in, wanting to understand and get
Sure.
on board with everybody else. But
Sure.
then the more that we have teachers trained on it, then it would be better to get on more of a
That would be great.
linear,
Yeah. That would be
which,
wonderful.
yeah, we
especially-
kind of like you kind of discuss of making sure, well, if the Three Little Pigs has been done, we know that group doesn't need it again. So it's at least
Yes.
we've discussed enough to know no duplicates and doubling up.
Yes. That's good.
But we
Yeah.
can do
So
better.
just out of interest, how many teachers? Sounds like you have a good number of French teachers at your school. You must have a big school, or
It's a private school, 2 classes of every grade. I teach the junior primary beginner French.
Yeah.
Then we have a grade 1-2 French teacher that is kind of the start of immersion. Or not immersion, but in the French classes. Then I teach grade 3-4 again. And then we have a grade 5-6 teacher.
Oh, I
So
see.
kind of
Okay.
3 of us throughout, but just adding more every year.
Right.
But
Oh, okay. Well, that's very interesting. Well, if everyone would like to use AIM, I would be thrilled if you could come to the Winter Institute, and your colleagues as well, if they would like to. I mean, AIM is always most powerful if everyone is using it, that consistency happens. I mean, it's the same with anything, something someone is doing, but yeah. And then if it is decided that everyone would like to do AIM, I can definitely, it would be my pleasure to meet with you, and I just, can make suggestions in terms of, grade 1 would be good to do this. And then if you do this in grade 1, this would be good to do in grade 2, and so on, working up.
yeah.
Yeah. But you do have 3 options across the elementary grades. You have 3 options at every step level. So it does give that ability for flexibility.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
I have some questions too, if
Yes,
that's okay.
Heidi.
My question is, so the person I saw was doing it with French immersion kindergarten, and so obviously it's super useful there. But how would you implement it, or is it as useful for, let's say, like a grade 2-3 immersion program where they're already pretty fluent in the language, and I guess what would you do there?
So it depends on whether they are very fluent or not. I've been asked to go in and train teachers in immersion schools where the kids, even in grade 3, they understand French well, but they're not speaking fantastically well. And so in those cases, some consultants have invited me to go in and show the teachers. So at that level, what we recommend is that teachers just start with a step 1 kit. Yes, the kids will know a lot of the words, but some of the kids won't necessarily know how to spell those high frequency words very well. And they often won't have had the opportunity for a lot of sustained speaking in complete thoughts. Maybe they might be just used to giving 1-word answers, or an AIM focuses a lot on complete thought language production to maximize language production. So that will really help those students who have, even if they've developed some proficiency receptively or productively, it helps them to really push that more. Now, what AIM does, the techniques that AIM uses are applicable even in an English first language classroom, because we focus a lot on theater and drama. We focus on the development of writing skills, literacy skills. Of course, students who are in a second language program are learning words and new words. That grammar aspect is very important and helpful when you get up into the higher grades, say grades 3, 2, 3, 4, where they're really now able to focus more on the, why do you not say je veux marche, you say je veux marcher, and so on, and il est content, but elle est contente, so all of working with the grammar comes into play for the older immersion students. And just the focus on the development of students' writing, creative writing ability. It comes into play really in those grades, because you want every student to write 8 to 10 to 12 page story retellings and story extensions in every kit. And so with that extensive practice with writing, they're going to get better and better. So AIM offers a lot for students in in immersion programs grades 3 and up. If there is a need, if the students aren't writing 10-page stories or speaking really proficiently yet.
Gotcha. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. They're just good teaching practice, really. But they're all bundled into a kit and a methodology. And, at that age, you can pick and choose. So in a grade 3 French immersion classroom, I would say just focus on the kit 40 minutes every day, just as if you only had 40 minutes of core French anyway. And then use the techniques and strategies as you learn them through the kit. Try to apply them, the total and partial questions to differentiate questioning when you're doing a math class or a social studies class. And, helping the students to promote correct language use in grammar by using the gestures if they're not using them when you're doing social studies or science and so on. So these techniques can just be used in other classes as well as you learn them, focusing on the pared down language and the use of gesture even when you're explaining things or asking questions in other classes as well, as is shown and as we have in our immersion packages for kindergarten and grade 1. We have immersion packages for those grades, not for other grades, but teachers in other grades can certainly use the strategies in other classes too throughout the day.
Sweet. Thank you. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
excited to go see a kit in person somewhere and look through it.
Great. Yeah, well, I could give you a free trial of a kit if you'd like to see one. That would be my pleasure to do that. If you want to if you would like, you could send me an email and I can send along a free trial of a kit that's appropriate for the grades that you're looking at.
Sweet. Yeah, I don't know what grade I'm going to be teaching yet. I'm just TOCing right now. So I'll look for them out in the wild.
Sure. Okay. That sounds great, Heidi. All right. Well, thank you, Heidi and Jose, for joining me today. Hopefully it was of benefit to you and interesting. And please keep in touch. If you have any questions, I'm happy to respond by email if you like, or we can set up another Zoom meeting if you have questions or want me to show you something. So don't hesitate.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And I appreciate the time, and
you're welcome.
I'll pass the video recording on to Laura. She wanted to join, and then if her and I have any other questions, then we'll reach out.
No problem. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining, and hope to see you at our Winter Institute.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.